The next pose we're going to demonstrate is Garudhasana, or the eagle pose. Now, many people find this pose easier than Gomuktasana, but some people do find it difficult because the ranges of motion are a little bit different and the muscles involved are different. So if it's difficult for you to do adduction, which is to bring the arm across with your hand at the height of your shoulder, because often what people do is accommodate with the shoulder by lifting the shoulder blade up and their hand descends, and that is what causes difficulty in getting into the full pose of Garudhasana. So you can just try and see if you can get your elbows to touch and your palms to touch and keep the elbow joint at shoulder height. And if you can do that, then you have a pretty good chance of being able to get into the pose fairly easily. Now, some people it's taught where they just throw their arms across, and then they throw their arms across, their forearms across, and grab whatever they can. Like cow face pose, you want to be a little bit more precise in how you make your movements. So you could take your big inhalation, raise the arms up, and with the exhalation, find out if you can actually cross one elbow on top of the other. If that can be done easily, then you have to know about supination and pronation with your forearms, because you have to do supination with one hand and pronation with the other. Now, some people can do the pronation with their forearms, but they have a difficult time getting that wrist to work, and so one wrist is always bent. So again, preparation is the key to being able to do this pose, and by preparation, I mean something other than an asana. You can attempt to do this pose for years, and you might not make much difference in the range of motions you have to actually make this pose happen for you. So there are some things you can do for preparation in this particular pose, one of which is if you separate your feet a bit, bend your knees, and it's almost like a Tai Chi movement. But you keep your hand again as high as your shoulder, just like you would in the pose, and you just swing the arm back and forth. And you'll notice that eventually you see if you can bend the elbow and get the hand to go to the back. So give yourself a nice slap on the back, because you're going to need it when you start doing these asanas and have difficulty doing them. And then you just switch and do both arms, because the body is usually not symmetrical. And even though asana is about symmetry, the only way you can do these poses easily and safely is if you have symmetry in the body. So if one shoulder is not quite as mobile as the other, then you're always going to have that asymmetry. And the real benefits of asana are not going to come. If your body is prepared to do an asana, you'll find that you can go into meditation easier. You can go into all the last 4 stages of yoga easier. So, to go into the pose, you take your inhale, you exhale, which collapses the chest a little bit. Then you do your supination and pronation. Now, what happens here is a lot of people have difficulty lifting their elbows. So if you lift your elbows, especially the bottom one, up to the shoulder height, it helps to separate the shoulder blades, and it helps to, as you inhale, lift the sternum, it gets all the front chest muscles involved. Then you consciously try and rotate your forearm bones. And then what you try and do is push the upper arm forearm over to the lower forearm. And so you create pressure there. And then you try and press the hand and the fingers against each other. And this will give you a whole new appreciation for Garudhasana, by keeping the elbows elevated, rotating and pushing the forearms and elbows against each other, and then finally the fingers and hand. And then when you release, you inhale, you exhale, and you separate the arms to the sides.
Thank you. So if you were going to do body work to help somebody to get more into that, would it be the same as the body work you would do in the last? Or is the prep body work not the case? It's better to do the preparation than you should?
No, you can do preparation through body work or preparation through movement.
Okay.
Either way.
So say you're going to do preparation through body work. Can you demo that on me? What would it be, or you can't do it standing?
No, we can do some stuff.
Seated?
It's just taking it through the range of motion, and I could find whether or not, because often the pectoral muscles and also the rhomboids, the trapezius, all those muscles, if they're not free, prevent the arm from coming across, because you've got to do this.
Standing or chair?
No, we can do standing, and if you just face that way, I guess, because what I'll do, I'll show
From
you
the back,
first what I'm
okay.
going to do. Because what I would probably is, as the teacher, you want to assess whether, no, don't help, you want to assess just how far that elbow can actually go. And if it'd be real nice if it would come fairly close to the opposite shoulder.
Okay, can you say now, Glenn, now I'm going to show you a little bit of body work you could do. So I showed you some preparatory movements you can do that can help to
Yeah.
free it up, but now I'm going to show you some body work you could do.
Okay. Now for Garudhasana, there are some things as a teacher you can do to help assess your student and also to help the muscles and the joint get more free. One is to stabilize the shoulder blade down the back, and then again you just see that arm circle movement. Now as you're making that movement, you might be able to feel all kinds of sounds, or maybe the tendons moving a little bit not correctly, so that the clarity in the joint isn't so good. And of course you want to go through all of the ranges of motion, but the primary motion is adduction. So you'll notice that when you bring that elbow across the front plane of the body, are they actually helping you with the pectoral muscles to help you get that arm across? Ideally, the elbow should come at least to the midline and maybe a little bit across the midline in order for Garudhasana to be performed easily. You can also try the overhead movement that we tried in Gomuktasana and find out if they have a range of motion which is normal according to most normal human beings, how high that elbow can go as the elbow joint or the shoulder blade stays in place.
What's normal?
Normal is just about this, but in a perfect world, you would also know with external rotation, the hand should come right up, or the arm should come right up next to the head, as in warrior number 1. So as a teacher, you do want to know the ranges of motion available. Now, if they have limitation in certain areas, you would want to work on the upper trapezius muscle, right at the base of the neck, and run your fingers all the way through that space between the collarbone and the top of the shoulder blade. And then likewise, you're going to want to get into the rhomboid muscles, which run from the middle spine out to the shoulder blade. And then a little bit lower, the trapezius muscle, which attaches onto the spine and then upward. So all of these back muscles have to be relaxed enough to allow for the shoulder joint to allow the elbow to cross the mid plane of the body. And then, turn please. Again, you want to try the supination and pronation, or internal and external rotation at the elbow, because in the final position for the eagle pose, both forearms have to go into one or the other movement. And if they're restricted, it's going to make it more difficult for you to go hand to hand in the pose. And then again, mostly the assessment can be done where you're shaking. Just a lot of shaking as preparation. Again, you can, if you have difficulty getting into a pose, it's best to do just basic human movements to help prepare your body for an asana. But to do asanas, to do an asana, you might be frustrated. And besides, moving like a human being is a lot more fun than moving like a yogi in these asanas.
Thank you. Brilliant.